Hey guys, it's good to see you again. I have a very different type of video for you today. Not exactly the norm, as in like just a Bible devotion, but recently I have discussed with you guys that earlier this year I kind of went through I guess like some health issues and just wasn't really doing too hot. And we shared, my husband and I shared in our my previous video that we had gotten some answers, and several of you have asked and reached out, and just out of concern and love, just to kind of check in and see like how things are going, and make sure that everything's okay. And I have felt led to do this video not to like boast or be like, oh well, I've just got everything under control now and everything's perfect. That's not the case. I've actually struggled with making this video because for a lot of people it deals with something that is pretty personal, but God just kept like pricking my heart and saying, you should share your journey with others. And the more I've talked to ladies face to face in person, I'm realizing that we all deal with a lot of this stuff that I have dealt with. And I feel like the pros to doing this video definitely outweigh the cons. And the Bible talks about like if you have the goods and you don't share that with others, then that's a sin. So I don't know, that's just what's on my heart. So today what we're going to talk about is, I guess we could title it as my hormone health journey. So just, a quick disclaimer at the beginning. I am a photographer. I am not a medical professional. I'm basically just sharing my personal journey and what has helped me. So take what you hear in this video today with a grain of salt, but at the same time, please listen, because if you have dealt with any of the troubles or the things that I have dealt with through the years, don't just accept that that's normal and that that's how life is supposed to be, because it may not be for you. So I am going to keep this as PG as possible. However, if there are children in the background, if you're not comfortable with them hearing, a little talk about hormones and intimacy and, like kind of the nitty-gritty health stuff, I won't dive too deep into that, but it is going to get mentioned. So if you don't want your kids around, if you're driving down the road in the car and they're with you, you may want to save this one for later. So disclaimer on that. I'll try to keep it as clean and everything as I can. So ultimately, to start with, I always like to tie things into scripture, and I struggled knowing exactly what direction to go with that. But I did find a little blip in Proverbs 31, and in verse 17 it talks about a virtuous woman, and how she girdeth her loins with strength and strengtheneth her arms. And that made me think that like building strength and vitality is something that God wants for us, but when we have an imbalance internally, that can feel impossible to do. And for me, it felt that way some days. Like I would have good days and then just not so good days, and you don't necessarily always feel like strengthening yourself and just picking up and carrying on, like we do. So don't know if that made sense, but anyway, basically the reason why I want to do this and make this video is just to share my story and, maybe help others who, if you've been feeling off or just not right and you don't know why, then that's my goal for today's video. So, I've actually been going through some treatment for some imbalances that we've discovered in my hormones for about 9 weeks now. And really early on in my treatment plan, I was feeling better, like really quick feeling better, like almost like I didn't believe it kind of thing. And it almost felt too good to be true. So I wanted to hold off on sharing this info out here with you guys because I did have my doubts, and, I was skeptical, and I wanted to, I guess, give it a little more time, because really after my first week or so, I was like, whoa, I feel so different. But I was like, pump the brakes, just hold on, and, make sure, and get a little a little more time under my belt before I go sharing all this with you guys. So anyway, a little bit of a background. I had really, ever since we had our son, maybe before then, I guess, but really more so after he came along, hormones change with pregnancy, and, everything post having a baby for me. I feel like ever since then, it's just been like a roller coaster. I would have just emotional stuff and physical stuff and just not feeling good. And I would for a little while, but then it wouldn't last long. And really early last year, I had gone to my GYN, and I had them do a full thyroid panel, which is what I thought was going to show, if there was anything wrong. I was like, okay, well, maybe if my hormones are out of whack and that's why I feel like a nutcase all the time, I was like, maybe that'll show. Unfortunately, though, when I went and had those labs done, everything appeared to be within normal limits. So I was like, okay, so maybe I'm just a nut job. And so at that time, he recommended trying a birth control, which I had done in the past, and it affects everyone differently, but for me, it does not set well. And I did try going back on it just because I was desperate, and in no time I was feeling terrible. My symptoms have worsened, so I stopped it completely, and didn't do anything for a little while. I did see a lady for several months who took a more holistic approach to things, and we went kind of slow with that, and I did have a hair tissue mineral analysis done, and we did uncover a few issues there, but nothing really. It's like everything we tried, it helped, but it didn't fix it, if that makes sense. Things got a little better, but then they just weren't completely better. And so several months ago, I finally just kind of came to a point where my symptoms had just come to a head. And, I was dealing with things like low energy, feeling fatigued all the time. I wasn't sleeping well. I had, and not that it's all about weight, but if you have extra weight, your body just doesn't feel good. So I did have stubborn weight that even though I was doing things that had worked in the past, I was eating right, I was trying to stay active, and, all that, it just wasn't working. And I would lose about 5 pounds, and then it would just sit there. And then I would get discouraged, and then it would yo-yo back up again. And so it was just constantly just 5 pounds down, but then I gain it back. And then it just was like a yo-yo, basically. And so I dealt with that. And as far as my cycle goes, with ovulation time, I would actually spike a low-grade fever sometimes, and I would have pain, and I would spot with ovulation for a few days, and then really I was to the point where majority of my cycle I was dealing with a lot of breast tenderness. And so literally, when I say tenderness, I'm talking about, it was like sensitivity, getting out of the shower and towel drying off anything in that area, it was like it sparked anger inside because it was so uncomfortable and so tender. So there was that. Like my throat would be sore. At random times my feet would swell, especially like in the heat, or if I'd been on my feet for a long time, they would just swell really bad. And that is something that I had addressed by doctors in the past, and my cardiologist and everything, and they were like, no answer for that really. I had spells of like really bad acne on my neck, like almost like cystic acne, and they would be really, really hard. And so of course that wasn't great. And then like unwanted like facial hair, peach fuzz. It was like I had gotten to the point where I had a lot of that compared to what I used to. Sometimes I would wake up at night like super hot. I would be so sweaty, like I would literally feel like I had water all over my body, and my face would get really flush at times. So my cheeks would get really, really red for like no reason. Not, and I wouldn't even be up like doing things. It would just be like my face would get really flush. And then of course my cycles in general, sometimes they would be late, sometimes they would be on time. They were usually very, very heavy. Like I'm talking like would use an ultra tampon within like 45 minutes. That heavy. And so lots of stuff like that. And then emotional symptoms. I was irritable all the time, crazy mood swings, no energy or drive for my normal activities. And there was a low drive there as far as, intimacy goes with my husband. There were literally times where I didn't even want to be touched. And I'm talking like not in that kind of way, but even like if he would just come up and like hug me, or, just certain things, it was like I would actually like almost cringe instead of feeling like loving on him. Or even something as simple as like just give him a random kiss, hold his hand randomly, there was a weird thing there with like touch and all of that I felt like was stemming from, this imbalance that I had. I would take random crying spells where literally like some mornings I would get up and like try to start my day, but I just wasn't feeling it. But it was so bad to the point where, and I'm not generally a depressed person, but there were days where I would literally stand in the bathroom with the door closed, bury my face in a towel, and I would cry, like uncontrollably cry, like hard cry. And then I would try to get that out of my system and then go on with the rest of my day. And so I know that may be like, wow, how I can't believe that she's dealt with some of that. And I feel like sometimes we try to hide how we really feel and make it appear like everything's perfect, like, oh, everything's good, I'm fine. But it's okay to not be okay. Like, I don't know why we have this pride thing in us, maybe, or, like society tells you like, oh, you have to look good. You have to look like you have all your stuff together. And, oh, you can't show them that you have, issues with your emotions, or, you have to like put on this facade, if you will. And that's just, it kills me. Because we're not perfect and we're not okay all the time, and we need to understand that. Like, and if somebody don't, then I don't know, like nobody has their junk completely together. But anyway, my rant, it's okay for us to not be okay, but don't stay there. Like, get help. So that's part of why I wanted to do this video is like, if there's one other person who is dealing with what I have been through, the things that I have dealt with, like, there's hope. It doesn't have to be that way. So, back to, how how did I get help? Because other doctors in the past had, basically just, they didn't know any better, I guess, and they just sort of tried a Band-Aid fix, and it just wasn't working. And I had been praying probably around like May or June of this year. I had been praying specifically. I was like so desperate, and I was like, life is not supposed to be this way every day. And I prayed that God would send me the right person, somebody who would listen, and somebody who could help me. If there was really truly something wrong, that they could help me. And so, I am a photographer, and back at the end of 2023, I had done a shoot for Carolina Spark magazine, and they feature women in business on the cover, and they, give each of those ladies a article that tells about their business and what they do. And it was that time at the end of 2023, we were shooting the January edition, the cover for 2024. And one of the ladies who was on the cover of the magazine her name was Shannon Trim, and she has a clinic in downtown Asheville called Evoke Vitality. And way back when I did that shoot, I didn't really think much about what it was that she did. And, she had followed me on Instagram. I had followed her, but it was just kind of one of those things like, oh, I would see her stuff, but I never really like paid attention, I guess, to what she really does. And so really, in a vague nutshell, and if she watches this and I get it completely wrong, I'm sorry, Shannon, but I feel like, her clinic specializes in helping people to feel their best. And she deals a lot with hormone imbalances, and for both women and men, and just all kinds of stuff. And I had actually gone on her website. This was back in like June of this year, June or July. And, I'd listened to some of she had little podcasts, and she had on her Instagram, I really started paying attention and like going through her feed and, reading more. And it has to be a God thing, because I had already been following her since the end of 2023. But I guess it just hadn't clicked, and maybe it's God's timing. It wasn't the right time. I don't know, but I was really paying attention to what she does, and I was like, whoa, hold up. I was like, she might be able to help me, because a lot of her patients, it seemed that they were dealing with a lot of the things that I had been dealing with for so long. And so one morning in July, I called, and it was just one of those mornings, and I was like, Lord, I am just desperate. Like, I need help. And I came across, no coincidence, I came across one of her posts, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to just call and make an appointment. And so fast forward, I went in for lab work, went in for my initial consult with her. I went in very skeptical, just because of how, appointments had gone with doctors in the past, and how I go and have lab work done, and they're like, oh, everything looks normal, it's just something you have to deal with. So when I went in for that initial visit for her to go over my lab work results, I was shocked and literally almost in tears, because as I sat there, it was like she knew already before I even had to tell her about some of the symptoms that I had had. It was like she just knew already, and just like named off all these things that I had been dealing with. And she was like, basically, based off of my results and my ranges, she said everything individually appeared normal, like within normal limits. But when you really look at the relationship between, these hormones and things, and your levels, and how they correlate with each other, She was like, you're normal, but you're not normal. She was like, you're normal as in you're telling me everything that, you know, sounds on par with what I'm seeing in your lab results, but it's not normal. And, you know, just there was hope, you know, instantly I was like, what? Wait, can you say that again? Like, something's not right. And I've been dealing with this for so long now. And so basically my results, my individual panels and what they showed, my estrogen was like super, super crazy high. My testosterone level had basically tanked. My progesterone was low. My thyroid level was actually like so low that it was like, I think she said subclinical, like hypothyroidism. My vitamin D was very low, which I found odd because I had been, for over a year, I had been taking a vitamin D supplement, and apparently it just wasn't enough. So I was still very low. And she said basically with my age, I am, at the time of making this video, I'm 39. And basically with everything she saw in my labs and given my age and everything, I had entered into or had been in the perimenopause phase. So not quite there to be in menopause yet, but she told me that there is a whole window of time that, you know, it varies for women, for each individual woman as to how long perimenopause lasts. And I mean, it could be like 10 or 15 or 20 years. I don't even know. Like, but just, I was blown away. I was like, oh, wow. So there I found myself in that situation. So what she did for me specifically, and again, I don't recommend that everybody just goes out and gets put on any of these medications or treatments without consulting with someone who truly knows what they're talking about. But my individual treatment plan, if you've ever heard of BioT testosterone pellets, I had those implanted, and those will be implanted probably every 3 to 4 months moving forward, I guess for as long as I need them. And I take a low dose of thyroid NP in the mornings, right when I get up. And then I take progesterone at night, before I go to bed. And she put me on a stronger vitamin D supplement. And there's one supplement too that I had been taking previously, and I really loved it, and she loves it too, so she just kept me on it. And it's called 5-HTP. Basically that just helps with, you know, your mood and sleeping better. But I guess where I was so out of whack, that my sleep was so like disrupted anyway, that it helped, but it wasn't great. But now it's really helping a lot. So basically after you know, that was the treatment plan that she started for me, and been doing all of that for about 9 weeks now. And I think tomorrow is actually 9 weeks. And so, like, how I feel now compared to how I felt prior to, it was like a complete 180. I cannot even tell you, I am a different person. Like, if I could grab your cheeks and tell you that, like, I am different. I feel so good. And like, this is not an infomercial. This is not, I don't get paid to say this. I'd be cool if I did, but I don't. Like, I just am blown away and so thankful that God has answered prayers for me. And like, I get emotional thinking about it. It has been such a change, such a game changer. And, you know, my energy has been way higher. My mood has been very much like a constant, like, I've gone from like having days, like maybe a few good days a month, and every other day was like just feeling like just terrible, to mostly good days. And I might have had like a day or two here and there where, you know, I might have felt like kind of crummy or felt moody or, you know, whatever. And to be where I am and to come from where I have been, like, whoa. My sleep has been better. And just, you know, my everyday like tasks and everything have just like, things just kind of like roll off my shoulder now, where every little thing was like annoyed the fire out of me. Like I would, I don't even know. Like I can't even put it into words hardly, like how different things have been. And so I went a few weeks ago. I had my labs rechecked when I was about 6 weeks post starting my treatment, and already my levels had improved so much. Even Shannon, she was like, whoa, like, you bound to be like, you know, a different person. And I was like, oh, I am. And even my husband, he's like, no, like, you are like totally different. And so, you know, my labs look great. My vitamin D was still not quite where she wants it to be. It was still low, but she said that that one can take some time to get up. I'm actually, the supplement she prescribed is like twice the strength, I believe, as of what I was taking. So it hadn't really changed a whole lot, but she was like, let's give that one some time. But everything else was like crazy different, and like in a good way. So it's just been so amazing. Like, you know, now that my energy level has been increased, you know, I have a desire to be more active. I'm back into a regular exercise routine, which was something that, like, I love eating healthy and staying active, but it was like my mental state through all of this, like prior to, you know, discovering these imbalances and starting my treatment, I couldn't get that motivation. I just could not get there. So, you know, finally I'm like, I'm back in my groove with, you know, eating healthier, and, you know, the crappy food cravings are like way down compared to what they were. And, you know, I still have some, you know, sweet things and junk here and there, but it's like most of the time, like during the week, I don't crave it. And my body actually wants the good proteins and carbs and fats and things. And, so yeah, like that has been totally different. You know, a lot of the symptoms that I dealt with, you know, I'm still in the phase where like I'm trying to figure out like how my cycles are going to go, because my first one after starting my treatment, it came a little early. And then the next one, it hasn't actually hit yet. Like I'm a little behind on that one, but she was telling me that the progesterone can kind of play into that. So I'm kind of waiting to see what next cycle brings. But as far as like the tenderness that I was experiencing in my breasts, like that literally went away so soon after starting my treatment. And like the acne on my neck, I haven't really had that issue. Ovulation, like the last cycle, like I actually barely even knew that it was time for that part of my cycle. I didn't have, you know, like a fever. I didn't, you know, have like crazy pain and stuff like I had. So like already there's been improvements there. Touch a little bit on libido. We'll just say that it was like non-existent prior to. It's different. Like, if it could be more than a 180, like, it's not the same. It's improved. So, yes, I don't know why, like, this, I hope that any of this is making sense. If any of y'all can relate, like, I'm here for you. Like, I want to talk to you, and, like, I don't have the answers, but if you live around here, I know a girl that you can go see, and she had some answers for me, and really, I hope that by sharing my experience and, you know, not being afraid to say, like, I needed help, and go find that help in the correct place. I want to encourage you that if you've been dealing with some of those very same things, like, it's probably not normal, and you should seek out, you know, a professional who really truly specializes in this stuff. And, you know, Shannon told me, she was like, you know, we can't knock our general practitioners, our doctors, you know, that are just in general medicine, not just, but who are in general medicine, because, you know, she was like, most of the time it's that they were not taught in school like much about, you know, hormones and how they affect us, like other than the basics, like that's what they know. But she's actually like devoted a good portion of her career to studying out how hormones affect women and men, and what happens when things are not in balance, and how to get those things, get those levels in check, and to correct that. So, you know, all this doesn't mean that I am like completely fixed. You know, I understand like there's going to end up adjustments are going to have to be made, you know, throughout my treatment, no doubt. You know, that's just a given. And, you know, too, as I age, like, you know, I'm currently in perimenopause, but then when I do get to that point of menopause, then, you know, I'm just thankful that God sent me someone who is knowledgeable about that. And, you know, by finding Shannon and the help that she's given me so far, I have hope that, you know, in the future that, you know, I can look forward to navigating menopause and, you know, all this stuff, that the crazy stuff that comes with being a woman. Hopefully that I can navigate that with grace, ultimately with God's help, but with the help of others who are knowledgeable, like Shannon. So just encourage you one last time, if you're struggling and something feels off, don't ignore it. You shouldn't feel bad all of the time, and listen to your body and take action in order to get yourself in a better place, because not only will you feel better, it's going to benefit you, it's going to benefit your family, your friends, like everyone around you will, I promise they'll notice a difference. And life is not meant to be spent feeling terrible. You know, God cares about our health, our body, our mind, our soul, and I truly believe that it honors Him. You know, when we take steps towards, you know, healing and being more whole or complete. So don't just look at it like, you know, oh, I'm just doing this for me, but as you're honoring your body and the life that God gave you by taking that step and getting help and trying to better your health. Like, I truly believe that. So hopefully this was helpful in some way to someone. Shout out again to Shannon at Evoke Vitality and all of her amazing staff. The ladies have been so good on this journey so far, and I just can't thank them enough. So if you found this video helpful today, be sure you give it a thumbs up, like it, comment below. If you have questions, I'll do my best to answer, but again, I'm no professional, but I can direct you to the correct place to get an answer, hopefully. But make sure that you subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more of my content. I love you all. Remember to be still and be strong in the Lord, and I'll see you soon. Bye, friends.